G'day guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I am featuring a piece from Undone. So this piece here again has been provided courtesy of my friend and supporter Graham, a local guy who has been very kind in providing much of his collection. So Undone, guys, this is a Hong Kong based company run by a watch enthusiast group, a bunch of guys who really are keen on the details. You know, it comes through in their products. So they first started with the Undone Aqua, and then the Urban Kickstarter was in 2017. So this is the Undone Urban Kickstarter 2017. It's a bit of a success story. So you can see the model here. It's the hybrid mechanical quartz chronograph. So let's just get into the packaging. So nothing too much to write home about. It's kind of a cardboard covered with this kind of denim cloth, I suppose, and then a button to open the actual case, the owner's manual, which is, you know, going to be pretty straightforward. I don't think there's too much complication in operating this particular chronograph. Nice vintage kind of postcard, I suppose, if you will. First customizable retro watch. So, you know, that kind of tells you the direction that they've taken with the company. It really is very much based on customizable pieces. So taking this out, let's show you the watch here, you know, and look at that. That's really quite gorgeous, isn't it? So this is the Urban Vintage Killy model, and it is named that because it's inspired by the Rolex Dato Compax that was I guess famously worn by Jean-Claude Killy. I believe he's a skier, and he made this particular Rolex model famous. Now this is actually quite different from the Rolex Dato Complex, but you know, I guess you can say it takes some of the cues from it. You know, maybe the layout, certainly the dial color, as well as the blue hands that some of those models had. You know, I'll try to find screenshots to share with you guys here. Okay, so in terms of the customizable capability of this watch, now this is the design that is named the Killy, but you can customize it to no end. So there are 25 different dials that you can get with the Urban model, and they come in kind of different flavors. So this is a vintage feel. They have a modern range, and they also have a mystique range, kind of like a very much a new age type of feel, the mystique range of their dials. And then you can customize the case finishing, so rose gold or gold, I believe. You can actually choose different handsets to go with it. Case back, you can make it transparent, and you can customize it with engraving. And then you can, you know, there are also a wide range of straps that you can choose. So with all those options, it's near infinite, the combinations you can get. Now you might be wondering, what movement is this? And it is actually a quartz, as the box said, but it's a mechanical quartz, and they've kind of gone for a second-hand movement that mimics a mechanical movement. So it's kind of 1/5 second clicks there. So this is a Seiko VK61 mechanical quartz hybrid. It is actually a flyback chronograph, pleasingly. So I'll just show you that now. So it is 1/5 of a second. So if I stop it with that 2 o'clock button and let you see, you get, so start, okay, and stop. If you look at the dial carefully there, you're getting 1/5 of a second resolution on that inner ring there, right? That has, I guess right now it's reading 40 point something seconds on the minute there, right? So that's how you're getting the 1/5 of the second. And then just to let you know, the 12 o'clock sub dial there that has 60, that's a 60-minute totalizer. So it's really just a 60-minute chronograph. But now what I'm going to do is press the reset button, and you can see it will fly back to 0. Okay, so you don't actually have to start and stop it. You can actually fly it back to 0. And that's really not the demonstration of flyback. Flyback would be when it's still running. You can click it and it will just straight away go to 0. You don't actually have to stop it first. So that's the meaning of flyback. Reset button that will get the chronograph back to 0 while it's still running. Okay, so 1/5 of a second central hand, you can see there that I've demonstrated. It does have a small seconds quartz at the the 6 o'clock subdial there, and straight away when you look at that, you know it's a quartz because that one gives it away. That actually is ticking. The case here is 40 millimeter in diameter, so very perfectly round 40 millimeter there. 316L steel. Thickness is a very pleasingly thin 12 millimeters. The lug width here is 20 millimeter for classic proportions, and the lug to lug is actually quite decent for this watch, which is only 40 millimeters, but the lug to lug actually is 48 because you do have those long lugs sticking out there, but you know it is actually still a fairly modest size. In terms of weight, it is actually very, very light. It comes in at 60 grams, which I think is, you know, lighter than some resin G-Shock models that I have. You know, it really disappears on the wrist with 60 grams for that quartz movement there. All right, so in terms of finishing, just let you have a look. Polished on the top, right, as well as the top surface of the lugs. Polished on the bottom case back, but it's got a vertical brush finishing pattern for the sides of the case, right? You can see that finishing there. The case back is not screw-in, and I believe it therefore is a friction insertion case back. The crowns are just loose pushers. That's actually a loose crown there. There's no screw-in. It does have a nice sign there though for the U for the Undone. So for those combination of push-in and push crowns, it is actually just rated at 30 meter for the water rating. Okay, so now let's get into the dial a little bit more, you know, if you've kind of had a chance to look at this already. But it is a nice vintage off-white on this version. Printed dial, right, the vintage feel of it. There's no applied anything on this dial at all. It does have a busy periphery, so you can see there, it's got the 60 seconds on the inner dial just outside the hour markings, and then it's got a telemeter scale, right, just outside that, and then even further out you have a tachometer scale. So tachometer, of course, measuring speed over a certain distance, and then telemeter is to measure, I guess, the distance of a phenomenon in atmosphere, right, that is both observable and audible. So for example, lightning, you can use that to time between visible lightning and the audible thunder to work out how far away that lightning strike may be. You know, that's probably the most classic application of something like that. Or I guess an explosion or something very loud and very visible at a distance. Those would be the examples that you would use a telemeter for. Okay, so the subdials are letting you see the subdials now. I think it's very difficult for me to convey this, but there is a slight recess of those two subdials there. So that's a pleasing little detail, a little bit of 3D there, but it is actually quite subtle and probably very difficult to come through on this light, on this camera. But you know, it is there. If you hold it in hand, there's no doubt about it. The hands are a nice blue. I think it's it's not flame blue, it's a different treatment, but it is kind of nice. It really does catch the light in the sun and offsets the dial quite nicely. There's classic leaf hands. There is no lume on this watch. It's kind of this vintage feel, so they've gone for no lume, which can be, I guess, maybe a slight drawback in a watch that really is not a formal watch. It's really more of a sports style watch. Going to the glass, right, it's actually mineral glass, but they call it K1, so domed mineral glass, K1 crystal, which in my research suggests that it is actually just about as hard a hardened mineral glass you can get. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you know, some of the advertising materials say that K1 crystal is nearly as hard as sapphire and nearly as shatter resistant as the toughest glass that you can find. You know, so that might be a bit of marketing spin, but let me know if you know any more about K1 glass. Moving on to the band, right? This choice of band is the default for the Urban Killy model, and this leather band is what they call the vintage light gray calf leather. But if you look on the website, they have a myriad of options you can go for. I think even Perlude style, but lots of different types of band colors and styles. It comes with a brush steel buckle, nothing too special. It's got the U for the Undone brand there. So that's the watch. What have I enjoyed about this? Well, look, I think it's a really cool vintage style design. It's really nicely done, I think, for the asking price. I haven't said this yet, but it is asking for 265 for a fixed default model. If you want to customize it, you can, but you do have to pay, I think, about $30 extra, so $295, and then you can customize it any way you want. Choose your dial, case finishing, case back, band, or handset as well. You can do all those options for $30 extra, and it becomes made to order, which is really nice feel for it. And I think for made to order, that is a very fair price. Even for the default, I think it's also for the quality of the finishing of this watch, it is actually a fair price, I think, for something as nicely done and with as much care that has been taken as this thing. I think they have great design elements, right? If you look at the pushers, right, the way that they've designed those and that vintage feel, that crown, that fat crown with the grips there, the hand style, the dial printing, and I'll mention here that the font, I really, really like that. Look at the numbers, right? Look at especially the 8 and the 9. Lots of character on that number font. I don't know what font that is, but it really has a very nice character that comes through here. Yes, the periphery is busy, but if you look at the middle, it's actually quite uncluttered, which is a nice balance there. They've chosen to put the brand at the bottom rather than somewhere in the middle, which is really, I appreciate that actually. Now, what are the weaknesses of a watch like this? Well, it's very light. I think that's the first thing I noticed. It's almost insubstantial. If you want something with a little bit more heft, this is definitely not the watch for you. Only 60 grams on the wrist. Practicality. Well, I think if you're going to go for a sports design, I just wonder why not just make it a bit more practical. Why not give it lume? Why not give it a date window? So, that may detract a bit from the finishing that they go for. And that's fair enough. I think they've gone for this very specific design. But if you want a kind of a casual watch, sports utility, I probably would usually go for a lume watch with a date. So that's just my personal preference, and you may either agree or disagree with that. Let me know what you think. And then lastly, just one little QC mention here. If you look at the seconds hand, the central seconds, there is actually a slight misalignment at the top. So I think it's very slightly, 1/5 of a second over to the left there. So I'll just kind of start it. You can see it's meant to be right at 12 o'clock when you reset. It is actually very slightly over to the left. I think they're just very, very slight. I guess, you might have expect perfection in some of your pieces. This one just has that little thing that I've noticed, and it probably isn't a widespread thing in their line, I would imagine. So guys, there we have it. That's the Urban Vintage. This one in the Killy style, but you can customize it no end on their website. Let me know what you think. Undone seem to be very well known in the watch circles. They certainly are very prominently featured in advertising on What You Seek, the biggest watch forum there is out there. If you have one of these, I'd like to know your experiences about Undone watches and the company. Guys, if you enjoy my videos, do consider subscribing. and put out new content every week, always aiming to be objective and unbiased about all things horology. Thank you again for sticking with me, and as always, I'll catch you next time.